used to smoke, I used to drink, I used to smoke, drink, and dance the jingle. I used to smoke and drink, smoke and drink, and dance the jingle. But now I'm standing on the corner, praying for me and you. Oh yeah, that's why I'm saved. I'm saved. People, let me tell you about a Jesus, you know I'm saved. Oh, saved. I'm gonna preach until your death kingdom. That's why I'm standing on the corner, hollering a rock on.
Hello, East Castle Place, and welcome to another edition of Quick Trivia with Mike. It's the weekly game show right here on channel 955, where we test your knowledge of facts. Some a little bit more historical in nature, some are very contemporary. Hopefully they're all a lot of fun. I am your host and the quizmaster, Mike Brever. You know how the game is played by now. We start our show by going over 3 questions we gave you last week, and then we announce the winner. I then give you 3 questions for the coming week. You have to get your answers to me by noon on Monday. Let's get right to it, shall we? As you know, though, we have a new tradition here at Quick Trivia. We always start the week by announcing East Castle Place birthdays. This week we have 5. Bill Latch is celebrating his birthday on the 20th of June. Happy birthday, Bill. June Eastvolt on the 21st is celebrating the 60th anniversary of her 29th birthday. Joanne Kauth is celebrating the 49th anniversary of her 29th birthday on the 22nd. On the 24th, Annie Hahn, the 56th anniversary of her 29th birthday. And on the 26th, Arlene Sturmer is celebrating a birthday. Happy birthday to all our birthday kids this week. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful birthday week. Let's take a look now at last week's questions, shall we? We began last week by talking a little bit about politics. We were talking about the filibuster, and I gave you a little bit of a history of the filibuster. I also talked to you about the longest filibusters in history. You remember the way the filibuster in the United States Senate is currently practiced is different than it used to be. Now the filibuster implies that to end discussion on a topic, you have to get 60 votes. In order to get 60 votes, it almost always means some Democrats and some Republicans have to agree to end debate. That forces compromise to make sure that both sides get a little something. Well, in reality, you know lately what has come of the filibuster is it is a way of blocking legislation. Democrats block Republicans, Republicans block Democrats. Leads to a lot of Washington standing still. The filibuster wasn't always that way, though. You remember from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, that wonderful Jimmy Stewart movie, the filibuster used to be an individual talking as long as they could on an individual topic. And I asked you, in the history of the filibuster, who had the longest non-stop single-person monologue filibuster in the history of the United States Senate? I actually gave you 4 of the top 5, and they were, let me see, the 5th longest, Senator Proxmire of Wisconsin spoke for 16 hours. Senator La Follette, also of Wisconsin, spoke for 18 hours. So you know, some of these people were really practiced in the art of oratory. Lots of stamina. Didn't necessarily need to be talking on the topic that they were filibustering. They could talk about anything. Get up and read 5 chapters of the Bible, or read the United States Constitution, or whatever they wanted. Well, who was the longest filibuster in history? United States Senator Strom Thurmond. And I asked you for extra credit. How long was that filibuster? In 1957, Strom Thurmond spoke for 24 hours and 18 minutes in a filibuster of the Civil Rights Act of 1957. Thurmond began speaking at 8:54 p.m. on August 28th and continued until 9:12 p.m. the following evening, reciting the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, President George Washington's farewell address, and other historical documents along the way. Thurmond was not the only lawmaker to filibuster on the issue. According to Senate records, teams of senators consumed 57 days filibustering between March 26th and June 19th, the day the Civil Rights Act of 1957 passed. Let's see who this is. We're going to call them back a little bit later. It's not as important right now as quick trivia with Mike. So there you have it. Strom Thurmond had the longest filibuster in United States Senate history. We then talked about Edward Maybridge. Edward Maybridge was a scientist and innovator of early photography. He's best known because he proved that horses, before video, he proved photographically that horses have all four hooves off the ground at the same time. He did so on a contract basis for a client of his to prove the fact that horses are off the ground, all four hooves at the same time. What his video or photographic evidence proved is that it didn't happen when the hooves were extended. It was when they were curled under the body, the front and backs. You know, a horse runs in a lunging motion, and Maybridge proved by setting up a series of 12 cameras, in essence, a stop-action photography system. I told you, however, that the famous sculptor Auguste Rodin didn't believe the theory in spite of the fact that he had photographic evidence. And he stated in a very famous quote why he did not believe. And I asked you, the quote begins, "It is the artist who is truthful and photography which lies." Why? The complete phrase is, "It is the artist who is truthful and it is photography which lies, for in reality, time does not stop." It's an artist kind of refusing to believe his own eyes. But it lends a touch of romanticism to the debate, I think. So there you have it. In reality, time does not stop. So a horse never has their hoofs all off the ground at the same time. Edward Maybridge would dispute that theory. And of course, Maybridge's client won the bet. So I guess posterity wins out. We talked a little bit last week in question 3 about the United States Postal Service. We talked about the fact that on June 13th, 1920, the Postal Service stopped accepting a particular item which could be mailed by parcel post. This particular item was first mailed or accepted as mail by the United States Post Office in 1913. So for 7 years, the Post Office mailed this particular commodity. On June 13th, 1920, the Post Office stopped accepting it as a commodity. What was it? Children. It only cost 15 cents in 1913 to send a child approximately a mile to visit his grandmother. The parents did, in fact, insure the child for $50. During the first few years of the service, some customers decided to test the limits of will mail anything anywhere at any time. And they postmarked their children. It actually wasn't what you really think. The post office did for 7 years do this, but they would assign a one-on-one special delivery, almost like a daycare situation. They'd send a postal employee, pick up the child, drive them a mile or two to where they were supposed to go. A delivery service. Didn't go through Central Post Office and all the rest of that stuff. However, on June 13th, 1920, the post office stopped accepting children as items that could be mailed. That was the answer to question number 3. Who got the questions correct? Well, Sandra Meyer. Sandra Meyer returns to the winner's circle. Not only did she get all 3 questions correct, but Sandra Meyer identified our mystery music. You know, at the beginning of the show and the end of the show, we play bumper music. We don't identify what it is. That serves as our tiebreaker. Last week, the bumper music was Papa Was a Rolling Stone by the Temptations. Not only did Sandra get all 3 questions correct, and frankly, I'm not sure how she got the Postal Service one correct. Good for her for that. But she also identified the music. Sandra Meyer returns to the winner's circle once again. Congratulations, Sandra. Your photo is going to be on channel 955 all week. Well, we're going to take a brief intermission. I encourage you, go get yourself a cup of coffee, maybe a donut. Get those brain cells going, because we've got some really good questions coming up in the second half. Hurry back. I'll be waiting right here.
This is the bronze name?
Here you go, house, please.
Yes.
It's the boy.
Sorry to keep you. Traffic was a killer.
Bosnan?
Welcome back to the second half of our show. I hope you got yourself a little bit of brain food. A cup of coffee, a donut maybe, something to relax and enjoy the second half, because we've got some good questions coming up. We're going to begin with a local question. We're going to talk a little bit about the Green Bay Packers. Why? Because on June 24th, 1922, this week in 1922, the American Professional Football Conference, which had been formed in 1920, officially became the National Football League. So 99 years ago this week, the American Professional Football Conference became the NFL. The Packers already were a member of the American Football Conference, and so they became a member of the National Football League. Again, the Green Bay Packers were initially formed on August 11th, 1919. Clearly, the Green Bay Packers, they're located out of Green Bay, Wisconsin, and is a member club of the National Football Conference Northern Division. It's the third oldest franchise in the NFL, dating back to 1919, and it is the only nonprofit community-owned, major league professional sports team based in the United States. Home games have been played at Lambeau Field since 1957. The Packers are the last of the small-town teams, which were common in the NFL during the league's early days in the 20s and the 30s. Again, founded in 1919, its original founding member was Curly Lambeau, and its sponsor was the Acme Meat Packing Company, hence the name, the Green Bay Packers. It traces its lineage to other semi-professional teams in Green Bay dating back to 1896. To date, the Packers, and I say to date because you never know what the future holds, the Packers have won 13 NFL championships, the most in NFL history. They're the only team to win 3 titles in a row, and they've done it twice. They did it in the 1930s, and they did it in the 1960s. Of course, in the 30s, they didn't always have playoffs. Sometimes it was just a team with the best record was declared the champion of the league. But the Packers have won 13 league championships. They have 9 titles in the pre-Super Bowl era, and they have 4 Super Bowl victories. They also won the first 2, which were the second and the third of their 3 championships in a row in the 60s. The only team to win 3 in a row in the modern era. The Vince Lombardi Trophy, of course, is named after Packers legendary coach Vince Lombardi. Their 2 subsequent Super Bowl wins, you know, one came in 1996 and one in 2010. Additionally, the Packers have recorded the most wins and the highest win-loss record in NFL history. They have 804 wins and a 571 winning history in the NFL. That includes both regular season and playoff games. The long-standing rivals are the Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, the Detroit Lions, all comprise the North Division. Of course, the Bears and the Packers is one of the oldest rivalries in professional sports history, dating back to 1921. My question to you: Packers didn't always play all their games in Green Bay. Sometimes as an effort to expand their fan base to all of Wisconsin, they played some games in Milwaukee. During the 30 or 40 years that they played, I think it was 30 years, they played games in Milwaukee. They played at 4 separate locations. 4 separate locations in the Milwaukee area. What are they? What are the 4 locations that the Green Bay Packers played in during their 30 years of playing games in the Milwaukee area, in addition to their games in Green Bay? Remember, they used to split, some in Green Bay, some in Milwaukee. What are those 4 locations? That was question number 1. Question number 2. On June 22nd, 1633, Galileo was prosecuted for teaching that the earth revolves around the sun. Kind of breaking with the Catholic Church at that time, which claimed that they had biblical evidence that the universe revolves around the earth, the sun included. Galileo, of course, was an Italian astronomer, physicist, engineer, sometimes described as a polymath from Pisa. Galileo has been called the father of observational astronomy and the father of modern physics. Galileo, in his lifetime, studied speed, velocity, gravity, free fall, the principle of relativity, inertia, projectile motion, among other things. He observed pendulums, hydrostatic balances. I mean, the man really just was interested in a lot of different things. Kind of a multitasker in his brain. Lots of different things really intrigued him. He was also known for his advances in telescope creations, getting as high as 30 times magnification on telescopes, which was really, really amazing at that time. Galileo's championing of Copernican heliocentrism, which is the Earth rotating daily and revolving around the sun, was met with opposition within the Catholic Church and actually from some astronomers. The matter was investigated by the Roman Inquisition in 1615, which concluded that heliocentrism was foolish, absurd, and heretical since it contradicted Holy Scripture. Now, I could tell you the specific passages in the Bible that seem to indicate that the earth is the center of the universe, but I'm not going to bother because we know now that it's not true anyways. Galileo defended his views in Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems, published in 1632, which appeared to attack Pope Urban VIII, thus alienating both the Pope and the Jesuits, who had supported Galileo up until this point. He was tried by the Inquisition, found vehemently suspect of heresy, and forced to recant. He spent the rest of his life under house arrest. During this time, he wrote two sciences in 1638, primarily concerning kinematics and the strength of materials, summarizing work he had done around 40 years earlier. Galileo actually received visitors until 1642, when after suffering fever and heart palpitations, he died on January 8, 1642. So now you know, in 1632, he was tried by the church for heresy, and he was convicted. 1632. When did the church, in their infinite wisdom, finally get around to admitting that they may have been a little bit wrong about this? From 1632 until when did the church believe that Galileo was a heretic for believing that the earth revolved around the sun? When? When did the church recant? Question number 2. Question number 3. We're going to go back a little bit into Hollywood history. We're going to take a look at Jane Russell. Why? Jane Russell was born on June 21st, 1921, 100 years ago this week. Jane Russell was born on June 21st. She passed away on February 28, 2011. American actress, singer, and model. She is known as one of Hollywood's leading sex symbols in the 40s and the 50s. Howard Hughes, actually, really the eccentric billionaire, really put her on the map with a movie called The Outlaw in 1943. In 1947, Russell delved into music before returning to films. After starring in several films in the 50s, including Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Russell again returned to music while completing several other films in the 60s. During her career in Hollywood, she starred in over 20 films. Russell married 3 times, adopted 3 children, and in 1955 founded WAIF, the first international adoption program. She received several accolades for her achievements in films, including having her hand and footprints immortalized in the forecourt of Grauman's Chinese Theater and having a star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame. Like all leading sex symbols of her time, her career had a series of ups and downs. You know now that she starred in movies. She was also a songstress. Really just a wonderful career. It seems that women tend to have those ups and downs. Men, maybe it's a sexism in Hollywood. Men tend to have a little bit more staying power. Nonetheless, Jane Russell, 100 years old this week, really had a stellar career. During one of her ups and downs, she made a tremendous comeback, starring in a movie with Bob Hope. Bob Hope and her really just played a wonderful role in Paleface. So it really resurrected her career. Bob Hope is very famous for having made a comment about Jane Russell. Bob Hope once joked, "Culture is the ability to describe Jane Russell how?" Culture is the ability to describe Jane Russell how? Very famous quote from Bob Hope, his co-star in Paleface. Bob Hope said of Jane Russell, "Culture is the ability to describe Jane Russell how?" That is question number 3, my folks. Put on your thinking caps. I hope you have a good time with them. Now, as always, I encourage you to pay attention to the bumper music at the beginning and end of the show. If 2 or more of you get the same number of questions correct, that bumper music is the tiebreaker. As always, get your answers to me by noon on Monday. You can email me at mbrever@eastcastleplace.com. Call me at 963-8425. You can write your answers on a sheet of paper, put them in my mailbox behind the concierge desk, or put them on the conference table in my office. Any one of those ways, in fact, any way at all that you can get your answers to me by noon on Monday. Maybe you will be in the winner's circle just like Sandra Meyer was this week. As always, I want to thank the management of Channel 955 ECTV, our president, Tyler Gudex, our executive producer, Laura Wengler, my producer and cameraman, Scott McFerrin, and as always, my artistic director, the incomparable Cooper Ledvina. I've said it many, many times. If there's anything about Quick Trivia with Mike that you like, Scott and Cooper's fingerprints are all over it. You might want to, let them know that you enjoy the show. Just to let them know that their impact on the show is appreciated. There you have it. That's our show for this week. As always, I want to thank you as well for inviting me into your home for this half hour. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, I am, as always, your host and the quizmaster, Mike Brever. I urge you to please be safe, be smart, and be patient. I think you can see East Castle Place is opening up again, and soon we will all be able to enjoy all that wonderful East Castle Place hospitality. So long, everybody. Have a great week.
That's why I sing, 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 sing. I feel all right. Yes, I do. Come on. Oh, yeah. You know that I'm singing. Oh, yes. I used to lie, used to cheat. I used to lie and cheat and step on people's feet. I used to lie and cheat and step on people's feet. Oh yeah, but now I'm stepping on the glory. Salvation.